What's up, guys? It's been a little while for some Star Wars reviews. It's kind of dried up a little bit lately, but we're back with a new figure, a new Black Series figure that I am very, very interested in taking a look at. We have got the new Knight of Ren figure in the most recent wave of Black Series that's sort of about ready to hit. I kind of got my hands on an early-ish figure here, and yeah, I'm really excited to take a look at this guy. Despite the fact that they never amounted to much of anything in the movies, I still think they look really cool, and this guy's going to make for an awesome figure. So we've got him here in our standard Black Series packaging. You can see him there in the window. We've got the artwork down there in the bottom corner. He is number 105 in the line, and we have got that same artwork on the back side as well as a very vague, tiny little write-up. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, our Black Series Knight of Ren figure, one that hopefully gets some counterparts down the road, and this guy more specifically is named VICRUL or VICRUL or something like that. The movie nor the box would tell you that, but he does have a name, and it's that. VICRUL, something like that. So we've got a pretty interesting figure here, honestly. There is some different stuff going on as far as articulation goes, but in a general sense, I think this is a really cool figure. I've honestly had a tremendous amount of fun playing around with this guy. Despite the fact that they don't do anything in the movie, the designs are really cool and they translate nicely to figure form. So let's see what this guy can do as far as articulation goes, because that's where things are weird but also really cool. So the head is independently articulated from the neck. So the neck goes down into the chest and then the neck goes up into the head. So he goes all the way up, he goes all the way down. The head on its own has a little bit of attitude on it, but then you can crook it all the way to the side. So if you really want to break his neck or something, you've got the ability to do that. It moves exceptionally well, and then you've got full rotation. The arms go out at the shoulders, a little bit higher than 90. You've got full rotation at the shoulders. You've got a butterfly joint in there. We've got single jointed elbows, as is the case with Black Series, but they are cut in such a way that you get really high range of motion, and they rotate as well. You've got rotation and lateral hinges at the left wrist, and then you've got a vertical hinge at the right because he's got a trigger finger hand. There is no cut in the chest as best I can tell. He's got a rubbery piece over top of it, but there is a ball peg waist, so he goes forward, he goes backward, he goes side to side, and then you can rotate. So you can get him to crunch over pretty well, and especially in conjunction with that head, I mean, he can look way far down just because of that. Where things kind of get a little weird is down below, because he's got the skirt piece, so that of course is going to complicate things to begin with. So the legs can go out. They can go out further than you can make them, obviously, but the skirt's in the way. He can kick forward further than you can actually make him kick, but the skirt's in the way. He can't really kick backwards. There is a thigh cut, but where things are really weird, and this is obviously something that a lot of folks kind of keyed in on when we first got reveals on this guy, is that he's got single jointed knees. And they are, one, kind of goofy looking. They just have 90-degree bend. They have rotation there as well. I don't know the reasoning behind this, because we don't see this in this line really at all. But at the same time, this piece back here would not allow double jointed knees to really do much of anything, so I'm assuming this is in relation to the fact that they didn't have to break up the sculpt here or here to implement double jointed knees with pins, so they just gave him this single, because really you can't get him to do much more anyway. So figures with plastic capes usually can't utilize the entirety of that double joint, so maybe that's what they're going for. It's weird, it's kind of goofy looking still. I mean, like, that is kind of just a weird ball there, but it does work, and at the same time, his legs look really clean when he's just standing still. So you can kind of get him to go into all of the riveting postures that you see in the movies, which is basically just standing around, and he's pretty seamless. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a weird thing. And then down at the ankles, you've got your standard rocker, and you've got hinges. So yeah, it's not a problem. That's not really bothering me too much. It's weird. It's different. It's an oddity for this line. But the rest of this figure is really mobile. And frankly, he moves a lot better than a lot of other recent figures. As far as the overall look and feel on this guy, I am honestly almost 100% satisfied with this figure. There is really only one thing as far as the aesthetics that kind of bothers me, and it's more so an annoyance. It's more so just sort of a weird thing in how it's implemented, and we'll get to it in just a second. So he is, as I've mentioned, covered in a rubbery tunic piece, which then transitions into the belt and then the skirt piece, and it's all pretty pliable, but it's not pliable enough that you can really move it around. It's not exactly posable. There is a great deal of texture all over it. You've got these stripes that run down the back and then they kind of crisscross over the front. There is a decent bit of weathering on him, kind of dirt weathering for, you know, when they're in the deserts of Pasana, I assume is what they're going for here. So you've got the weathering that extends from the shoulders to the chest. It's on the back, and then there's a cat hair on him, and then there's also some down here at the bottom, along with some at the boots. Is it entirely necessary? I'm not so sure it's necessary, but at the same time, if they were to go and give us more of these figures, if they keep this kind of aesthetic, I'm not too upset about it, because the alternatives is for him to just be unpainted flat black, and this does help to bring out some of the sculpt a little bit. The boots are maybe a little bit too heavy-handed, but for the most part, I do think he looks really good. There is a decent amount of difference in terms of finishes here. So the legs have a little bit of their own texture on them, so they look a little different than the boots. And then you've got these shiny bits over here for the gauntlets. The tunic and the skirt piece are, of course, their own separate thing. And then we've got my annoyance area here. The holster. I've got the gun on him already, and we'll talk about the gun here in a second. The holster is just really weird because, frankly, I don't know if I'm doing it right, and that sounds kind of stupid, but it's just two pieces of plastic that do not move, they do not come apart, and they are just rubbery. So you have to basically take the gun and put it in the bottom and then pull this flap here over top of it to keep it in place. There's no way for the gun to actually fit through both slots. That doesn't work. It's not possible. This is how it's supposed to go in based on the promo shots I found. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's an odd implementation. It certainly works, but I still feel like I'm doing it wrong. Otherwise, though, it's fine. And then we've got a little bit of silver paint here for his buckle. I just really can't get over the fact of how menacing this guy looks. He really does have this evil presence to him, and I really like it. He definitely meshes pretty well with Kylo Ren. You know, throw him next to Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Honestly, though, this guy is the focal point when I see the two of them next to each other. But I really like the sculpt here, and I think that they've got a good theme going in terms of just how dark this guy looks. And that all comes through as well when you get up to the head sculpt. And this guy was what he was called, like grenade face, I think, in some of the early drawing board ideas for him. And it comes through here because you've got that checkerboard pattern on the face, and then you've got a pretty subtle helmet design for the most part here. It's not too crazy. It's not nearly as outlandish as some of the others. And then that singular kind of slit for the visor, but it really works. The line work that runs down the front is crisp and clean, and the silver in the right light, it shines like chrome. It's really metallic, it's very reflective, and it kind of stands out against the rest of the very flat black body. So it's a great way to quote-unquote cap off this figure with a really cool helmet sculpt, in addition to kind of making him look a little bit more evil. Now, as far as accessories goes, this guy comes with two, and honestly, that's one more than I thought, because well, I didn't know what the hell this guy had outside of the scythe halberd kind of thing that he's got. So we're going to start there. So we've got this, it's honestly kind of an odd weapon. Like it doesn't, I don't know, it seems just kind of weird. It almost seems too small, but that's how it's supposed to be. It's this kind of weird half scythe, half halberd thing where it's not as long as a full staff, so it's a shorter melee weapon. There's a lot of sculpt going on with this thing, a lot of paint, silvers and gunmetals and blacks and grays and browns on it down here for the wrap. So of course this is 100% unique, 100% kind of a weird Knight of Ren style weapon. So you've got this guy, he can hold it single-handedly, more specifically in his left hand because it's a non-trigger finger hand, but you can also get two-handed poses in with both. And then to fit in his aforementioned weird holster, which we'll talk about again, we've got his gun. And this thing is just weird in how it sits in here, again, just like we've already talked about, because as far as I can tell, there's no easy way to just holster it, and you've got to kind of pry it apart. It works just fine, don't get me wrong. It's just kind of weird, and I still feel like I'm just not smart enough for this thing, like I'm doing something just really wrong by putting it in there that way. But we've got this very overly sculpted little gun here. It's just a pistol. It's got some gray with black wash on it, or silver with black wash rather, and then you've got some brown wraps down here on the actual handle. This of course is unique. Never seen anything like this in the line, and it looks pretty good. He holds it really well in his right hand, and then of course you can pop it back in his really weird holster by putting it in the bottom loop and then kind of stretching the top one over top of it. And it sits snugly in there. It's not going anywhere, but it's kind of weird. So at the end of the day, I really do like this figure. There are two things, again, that kind of stick out as weird to me, but they're not They're not really problems, they're just that. They're kind of weird. So the holster for the gun is odd. You know, if that's how it looks like in the movie, that's fine. I don't know how it's supposed to actually function because the top loop is smaller than the bottom, so they can't actually just shove that gun in there. It really doesn't work. You've got to pry the top over the back of the gun. It works, but it's weird. And then those knees are still just odd because, well, they're so different and they're not anything we're used to in this line. Do they work? Yes. Are they kind of funny looking? Yes. But he would have had limited range anyway because of the sculpt. So it's not like he's missing anything really here. He just has weird knees. Otherwise, though, I think he looks really, really good. The sculpt on him is good. The articulation outside of those knees is really well done. Great range of motion everywhere else. And then the small amount of weathering we have is nice. And then the silver on that mask really pops against the rest of the figure. Not to mention the fact that, despite the fact that they don't do a damn thing in these movies, I do think the Knights of Ren look really cool. And this one in particular translates to figure form quite well. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars Black Series Knight of Ren VICRUL figure. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.